he is of no value to the Russians, not political, not material. And at some point, he will be a liability to them.
Right.
And they can throw him into some kind of a deal because Russia needs to rehabilitate itself or at least rebuild connections with the West. And I think he will become dispensable.
Bashar Al Assad seemed like a rather underwhelming dictator. You'll know by now that he inherited power by accident after his brother died. He had little charisma, and the civil war meant that he was never in full control of Syria. But his mild appearance was deceptive, as his regime was brutal beyond imagination. 5 mass graves have been identified, and the evidence points to them being the resting place for hundreds of thousands of Assad's own people killed for simply opposing him. Will he ever face justice? And if he does, it will be because of Bill Wiley, a Canadian lawyer and a war crimes investigator who's compiled something called the Assad Archive. It is 1.3 million documents brought out of Syria that could be the key to uncovering the truth. Bill Wiley founded the Commission for International Justice and Accountability, and he joins us now. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Can you tell us over what kind of period these documents were brought out of Syria?
We started collecting documents with UK and US monies in 2012, and the last substantive loads came out in about 2022. So it was over a 10-year period.
And how did you get them out?
Basically, we established relationships with various opposition groups around the country, and there was no material value to them in these materials, despite their great intrinsic value for justice purposes. So they would let us gather the material up and take it outside of Syria to our headquarters in Europe.
And now you have 1.3 million documents. What is the process now? How many people are looking at them, and what do they show?
Well, they've been of great value for many years. We didn't collect any paper that we found in Syria. We collected paper that would be relevant for criminal justice purposes. And in a nutshell, what that means is documentation generated by the security intelligence, military, and political structures of the Assad regime. So when the material, as it has come out, it's digitalized. The technology works quite well in terms of searchability nowadays. And then it's fed to prosecutors across the West who have brought quite a few cases against regime perpetrators who indeed have been successfully prosecuted in various jurisdictions, particularly in Western Europe.
What kind of, obviously there's a lot of documentation, and I don't know how much of it you can reveal, but what kind of things do these documents show, and how much, if at all, do these documents explain how involved Bashar Al Assad and his father Hafez previously were in these killings that we're hearing about?
So it's important for your listeners to understand that the Syrian state was very, very bureaucratic. So they tended to paper or put onto paper most everything that they did, including their criminal activities, the mass hoovering up of people, particularly once the revolution kicked off in 2011, the abuse of those individuals in custody, the deaths of those individuals. Certain crimes would be hidden. So every person who perished, for example, in the detention facilities, and as you've said at the outset of this piece, there's tens and tens of thousands of those, there will be a death certificate. Now, the death certificates invariably read heart failure as opposed to tortured to death. Right. The key, though, is that any one piece of documentation is rather anodyne. You have to deal, and it's a very analytical process, but effectively you're bringing together a great many disparate sources to create an accurate picture of the criminality of the regime. But because it's a criminal justice process, at the end of the day, you need to establish the criminality of individuals, whether it be Assad at the top or all the way down the chain of command to the physical perpetrators, the torturers, the killers at the lower rungs of that chain of command.
So, yeah, exactly. So his signature, Bashar al-Assad's signature, royal seal or whatever, is not on any of these documents, or is it?
No, there's documents in the collection with Assad's signature on it. There's records, minutes of meetings of the highest reaching decision-making bodies where he has edited the marginalia of the draft minutes, saying yes, no, not at this time, this sort of thing.
Gosh.
So Assad was not a titular leader, if I could put it that way, or purely a constitutional leader. He had effective control over this machinery of death.
Right. Now, clearly, these documents will be very important should there be any kind of trial. But how hopeful are you, or how realistic is it that this will ever happen? And I know we've been here before many times with many other people accused of these kind of crimes. He's now in Russia, and it looks like he'll end his days there, really. So how likely is it that he will ever physically be brought to justice?
Well, if you'll permit me, I'll make 2 points. One concerning Assad and one concerning the many thousands of other perpetrators. So I'll start with the second group. The other perpetrators, as I've said earlier, have been prosecuted, and we're talking relatively small numbers, 10, 20, 30, over the last 10 years in various Western jurisdictions, domestic or national courts. As for Assad, I've been saying for some time, even before the regime fell, that the regime will fall. He will go to Moscow, Tehran, something like that. Ultimately, it's been Moscow. He is of no value to the Russians, not political, not material. And at some point, he will be a liability to them.
Right.
And they can throw him into some kind of a deal because Russia needs to rehabilitate itself, or at least rebuild connections with the West. And I think he will become dispensable. I've said elsewhere that I have a bet with a former member of our board that this will happen not later than the 1st of January, 2028.
Right. I was going to ask you for a timescale, and you have delivered on that. 1st of January 2028. That is very interesting indeed. About 3 years to go, you think, for Bashar al Assad.